Donald Trump unexpectedly changed his position and called on Republicans in the House of Representatives to vote for the release of all Epstein files. And such a sharp change in rhetoric shocked many, because just 2 days ago, Trump, on the contrary, publicly urged not to vote for this bill under any circumstances. And he called some of the Republicans who supported the release of the Epstein files traitors. Already this week, a vote will be announced in the United States House of Representatives, and more Republicans have declared their support for the release of the files. But there's no need to be surprised. Instead, we should give credit to the ingenuity of Donald Trump. The fact is that at the end of last week, there was talk in Congress that many Republicans were ready to break away from the party and go against Trump. Because this whole story with Epstein and the way Trump resists the publication of the files looks really strange, sociological polls showed most voters still backed the publication. Donald Trump simply has no choice but to pretend that the Republicans are not going against him, but are following his own orders. If the bill gets 2/3 of the votes in the House of Representatives, neither the Senate nor the White House will be able to prevent the publication of Epstein's files. But don't be quick to think that Trump has lost. Not at all. The White House pushed the United States Department of Justice into a scheme that not only bans the publication of the files, but also turns the Epstein scandal upside down. And now it puts him against the Democrats. And this scheme that Donald Trump is pulling off right now, we will break down together in this episode. My name is Alexei Pechai. Let's discuss this topic, but first, please subscribe to this channel, like the video, comment below, and join my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video, where we post breaking news as it comes in. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation or paid subscription using the links and details in the description of this video. Choose any format that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you can give. Well, you can also use the QR code on your screens. Fasten your seatbelts. This episode has plenty of cool twists and turns. United States President Donald Trump recently called on Republicans in the House of Representatives to vote for the release of all Jeffrey Epstein files and to reject what he calls the Democratic hoax. This was quite a sharp reversal from his previous attempts to discredit these efforts. Well, next I'll quote Donald Trump. Republicans in the House of Representatives should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide. And it's time to leave behind this Democratic hoax committed by radical left lunatics to distract from the great success of the Republican Party, including our recent victory over the Democratic shutdown. And so, friends, remember this phrase as Trump says, it's time. It's time to leave this hoax behind, because Trump himself is not planning to leave anything behind at all. Trump supporters claim this shows Trump has nothing to hide and is now prepared to release all the Epstein files for public viewing. But the thing is, the files will not be released anytime soon, even if Congress makes the appropriate decision, even if all the Republicans vote for publication, the files won't be released. And I'll explain why. And you shouldn't be surprised by such a sudden change in Donald Trump's position today. Trump's reversal of his decisions happened amid growing expectations of mass defections from the Republican Party ahead of the vote in the House of Representatives this week on the issue of trying to force the Department of Justice to release all materials related to the Epstein case. Republican Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky and Democratic Representative Ro Khanna from California gathered enough signatures last week on a petition that calls for this issue to be brought to a vote in the House of Representatives. Earlier on Sunday, Massie and Khanna optimistically stated that more and more Republicans are ready to vote for this bill. So, it's not just the 4 who signed the petition, but many, many more. Massie even stated that, in his opinion, 100 or more Republicans in the House of Representatives could break with Trump, who last week publicly demanded that Republicans under no circumstances vote for the release of the Epstein file. Remember this, Trump just a few days ago was urging them under no circumstances never to vote. Now he suddenly changes his position, and now look at what's happening. The Democrats will definitely all vote in favor, plus some Republicans, and the bill requiring the Justice Department to publish the Epstein files gets an absolute majority of votes in the House of Representatives. And under American law, this means that neither the Senate nor the White House will be able to veto or review this bill. This will mean a final decision by the entire legislative branch. And now imagine how Donald Trump will look, who yesterday very loudly called on all Republicans to sabotage this vote. And that's not all. At the end of last week, there were leaks that the leaders of the Republican Party are actually preparing for a significant number of Republicans to break away from Trump's position and support the bill. Trump immediately summoned those Republicans who signed Petition A to the White House Situation Room to talk them out of it, but it didn't work. Later, Trump lashed out at Marjorie Taylor Greene, calling her a traitor because she demanded the release of the Epstein files, but that didn't work either. The Republicans simply state, look, it just looks too strange when the president is so fiercely opposed to releasing files that supposedly aren't even dangerous to him. But that's not the main thing. The thing is, 77% of American voters said that all the files should be released. Show them. Donald Trump himself promised this during his campaign. Recently, Speaker Mike Johnson acted as if all was well and said, we'll just do it and move on. There's nothing to hide. The decision to hold a quick vote in the House, which is expected to take place on Tuesday, has already been made. Shortly after the oversight group in the House committee released thousands of new Epstein emails last week. And at this point, Trump's team realized that they could no longer keep the entire party under control, so they decided to act preemptively. When Trump called on Republicans to vote in favor, it no longer looked like a split in the party. It looked like following the boss's orders. Well, I mean, inevitably the Republicans would have voted in favor, and Trump seemed to be urging them not to do it. So it turns out they went against his will. And if they are going to vote anyway, and the leader says to vote, it looks like they just followed his request. So Trump doesn't appear defeated, and the party looks mostly united. But the question remains. Epstein's files could harm Donald Trump. Isn't he afraid of that? Is he afraid? But he knows that Epstein's files won't be published anytime soon, even if Congress demands it from the Justice Department. Here the law supports him. The thing is, back on Friday, Trump asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate the connections of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Hankson with many other prominent figures who are associated with the Democratic Party. This is an unprecedented move that was taken just a few days after the Democrats released emails from the late Epstein in which he is mentioned. And this move showed that Trump has something to be afraid of. Trump stated that the Democrats, quote, are using the Epstein hoax, which involves the Democrats themselves and Republicans, to try to distract from their catastrophic shutdown and all their other failures. I will ask Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, together with our great patriots, to have the FBI investigate the involvement and relationships of Jeffrey Epstein with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, John Pierpont Morgan Chase, and many other people and institutions to find out how they are connected. End of quote. And that was exactly the key to such a sharp change in Donald Trump's position. And this is Donald Trump's main trick. Nobody cares that this summer, on Donald Trump's orders, the FBI already searched all of Epstein's files. And in July, that same Pam Bondi announced, quote, based on the available evidence, there are no grounds for initiating additional criminal cases. And now it's manual, I emphasize, absolutely manual. The United States Department of Justice, which is in Donald Trump's hands, will investigate again, but this time with the involvement of the Democrats in this case. In July, Pam Bondi again stated there was no need to announce new investigations. And you know what the trick is? The thing is, it's too obvious a trick to avoid releasing the files. The whole trick is that the announced new criminal investigation gives the United States Department of Justice full authority not to release any materials at all. As a rule, the Department of Justice refrains from handing over materials even to Congress during an ongoing criminal investigation, since any public release could jeopardize the objectivity of the investigation or any subsequent criminal case. If there is one, of course. That is, Trump's pocket Department of Justice can spend years investigating the likely involvement of Democrats in the Epstein case, and not publish the scandalous files. Well, that's kind of an investigative secret. You can't publish files that are under investigation. And then nobody cares about the vote in Congress anymore. Besides, Congress itself might back down. Because, well, if there's a criminal investigation going on, that's a pretty good reason for Congress not to insist on releasing Epstein's files, since such a demand loses its meaning. But then a reasonable voter should wonder, why is Trump so afraid of the files being published? Donald Trump's supporters will now say, but the Democrats are involved in this case. Well, they really are mentioned. Among Epstein's most frequent contacts was former White House counsel under Barack Obama, Catherine Rumler, who represented Epstein as his lawyer. Plus, Summers is mentioned, the former Secretary of the Treasury under Clinton and Director of the National Economic Council under Barack Obama. They are mentioned. Clinton and Epstein were friends in the early 2000s. The former president was mentioned in Epstein's flight log on his private plane at least 16 times between 2002 and 2003. In 2023, John Pierpont Morgan paid $290 million as compensation in a class action lawsuit filed by Epstein's victims. They claimed that the bank turned a blind eye to unusual financial transactions, which they said facilitated Epstein's sexual exploitation. So the Democrats and John Pierpont Morgan are indeed mentioned in the files, and indeed they might somehow be involved, and so on. But corresponding with Epstein is not a crime, and there is no evidence in the emails that any of the Democrats were involved in Epstein's wrongdoing. And it would be fair to say that mentioning Donald Trump in Epstein's emails doesn't automatically make him a criminal either. I emphasize, not a single charge related to Epstein's files has been brought against Trump. But there is one big difference. But today, Clinton's office and John Pierpont Morgan Bank said that they are not against an investigation at all. They are not against the publication of all Epstein's files. But for some reason, Donald Trump is strongly opposed to this and is doing everything he can to prevent them from being made public. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye.